The Twits, Part 5. The great glue painting begins. This is the living room, announced Mugglewump. The grand and glorious living room where those two fearful, frumptuous freaks eat bird pie every week for supper. Please don't mention bird pie again, said the roly-poly bird. It gives me the shudders. We mustn't waste time, cried Mugglewump. Hurry up, hurry up. Now the first thing is this. I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all, smear it, every corner. Over the ceiling, they cried. Why the ceiling? Never mind why, shouted Mugglewump. Just do as you're told and don't argue. But how do we get up there, they asked. We can't reach. Monkeys can reach anywhere, shouted Mugglewump. He was in a frenzy of excitement now, waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping all over the room. Come on, jump on the table, stand on the chairs. Hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-poly can do it flying. Don't stand there gaping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have guns. Get on with it, for heaven's sake. And so the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew in to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and their beaks. There were buzzards, magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. The carpet goes on the ceiling. What now? They all cried, looking at Mugglewump. Aha, said Mugglewump. Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready? We're ready, said the monkeys. We're ready, said the birds. Pull out the carpet, shouted Mugglewump. Pull this huge carpet out from under the furniture and stick it onto the ceiling. Onto the ceiling, cried one of the small monkeys. But that's impossible, Dad. I'll stick you onto the ceiling if you don't shut up, snapped Mugglewump. Ooh, bit rude. He's Dotty, they cried. He's balmy, he's batty, he's nutty, he's screwy, he's wacky, cried the roly-poly bird. Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump at last. Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand, said Mugglewump, catching hold of one of the corners of the carpet. Pull, you nitwits, pull! The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire floor from wall to wall. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It's not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. Pull, yelled Mugglewump. Pull, pull, pull! He was like a demon hopping round the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible twits would be doing the same thing. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, and the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling. And there it stuck. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. The furniture goes up. Now the table, the big table, shouted Mugglewump. Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue onto the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick that to the ceiling as well. Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. Will it stay there, they cried. Is the glue strong enough to hold it up? It's the strongest glue in the world, Mugglewump replied. It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees. Please, said the roly-poly bird, I've asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie? They made every Wednesday, and all your friends have been boiled up, and I went on talking about it. I do beg your pardon, said Mugglewump. I'm so excited, I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs. Do the same for the chairs. All the chairs must be stuck upside down to the ceiling and in their right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing in with their guns. The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them to the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Mugglewump, and the big sofa and the sideboard and the lamps and all the tiny little things, the ashtrays, the ornaments and that beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything, must be stuck to the ceiling. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything onto the ceiling in exactly its right place, but they got it done in the end. What now? Asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Mugglewump. Turn all the pictures upside down. And will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch to see when those frumptuous freaks are coming back? I'll go, said the roly-poly bird. I'll sit on the telephone wires and keep guard. It'll give me a rest. The ravens swoop over. They had only just finished the job when the roly-poly bird came swooping in, screaming, "They're coming back! They're coming back!" Quickly, the birds flew back onto the roof of the house. The monkeys rushed into their cage and stood upside down, one on top of the other. A moment later, Mr. and Mrs. Twit came marching into the garden, each carrying a fearsome-looking gun. I'm glad to see those monkeys are still I'm glad to see those monkeys are still upside down," said Mr. Twit. "They're too stupid to do anything else," said Mrs. Twit. "Hey, look at those cheeky birds, still up there on the roof. Let's go inside and load our lovely new guns, and then it'll be bang, bang, bang. Bird pie for supper." Just as Mr. and Mrs. Twit were about to enter the house, two black ravens swooped low over their heads. Each bird carried a paintbrush in its claw, and each paintbrush was smeared with sticky glue. As the ravens whizzed over, they brushed a streak of sticky glue onto the tops of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's heads. They did it with the slightest touch, but even so, the Twits both felt it. "What's that?" cried Mrs. Twit. "Some beastly bird has dropped its dirty droppings on my head." "On mine too." What's that voice? "On mine too," shouted Mr. Twit. I felt it. "Don't touch it," cried Mrs. Twit. "You'll get it all over your hands. Come inside and we'll wash it off at the sink." "The filthy, dirty brutes," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'll bet they did it on purpose. Just wait till I've loaded my gun." Mrs. Twit got the key from under the doormat, where Mugglewump had replaced it, and into the house they went. The Twits are turned upside down. What's this?" gasped Mr. Twit as they entered the living room. "What's happened?" screamed Mrs. Twit. They stood in the middle of the room, looking up. All the furniture, the big table, the chairs, the sofa, the lamps, the little side tables, the cabinet with bottles of beer on it, the ornaments, the electric fire, the carpet, everything was stuck upside down to the ceiling. The pictures were upside down on the walls, and the floor they were standing on was absolutely bare. What's more, it had been painted white to look like the ceiling. "Look!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "That's the floor! The floor's up there, and this is the ceiling! We're standing on the ceiling!" "We're upside down," gasped Mr. Twit. "We must be upside down. We're standing on the ceiling, looking up at the floor." "Ow, help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Help, help, help! I'm beginning to feel giddy." So am I, cried Mr. Twit. "I don't like this one bit." "We're upside down and all the blood's going to me head," screamed Mrs. Twit. "If we don't do something quickly, I shall die. I know I will." "I've got it," cried Mr. Twit. "I know what we'll do. We'll stand on our heads, then anyway we'll be up the right way up." So they stood on their heads, and of course, the moment the tops of their heads touched the floor, that the sticky glue the ravens had brushed on it a few moments before did its job. They were stuck. They were pinned down, cemented, glued, fixed to the floorboards. Through a crack in the door, the monkeys watched. They jumped right out of their cage the moment the Twits had gone inside, and the roly-poly bird watched, and all the other birds flew in and out to catch a glimpse of this extraordinary sight. The monkeys escape. That evening, Mugglewump and his family went up to the big wood on top of the hill, and in the tallest tree of all they built a marvellous treehouse. All the birds, especially the big ones, the crows, the rooks, the magpies, made their nests around the treehouse so that nobody could see it from the ground. "You can't stay up here forever, you know," the roly-poly bird said. "Why not?" asked Mugglewump. "It's a lovely place." "Just you wait till the winter comes," the roly-poly bird said. "Monkeys don't like cold weather, do they?" "They most certainly do not," cried Mugglewump. "Are the winters so very cold over here?" "It's all snow and ice," said the roly-poly bird. "Sometimes it's so cold a bird will wake up in the morning with its feet frozen to the bough that he's been roosting on." "Then what shall we do?" cried Mugglewump. "My family will all be deep freezed." "No, they won't," said the roly-poly bird, "because when the first leaves start falling from the trees in the autumn, you can all fly home to Africa with me." "Don't be ridiculous," Mugglewump said. "Monkeys can't fly." "You can sit on my back," said the roly-poly bird. "I shall take you one at a time. You can travel by roly-poly superjet, and it won't cost you a penny." The Twits get the shrinks. And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room. "It's all your fault," yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air. "You're the one, you ugly cow, who went hopping around shouting, 'We're upside down, we're upside down.' And you're the one who said to stand on our heads, so we'd be the right way up, you whispery old warthog, screamed Mrs. Twit. Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever. You may be stuck here forever, said Mr. Twit, but not me. I'm going to get away. Mr. Twit wriggled and squirmed. He squiggled and wormed, and he twisted and turned, and he choggled and churned, but the sticky glue held him to the floor just as tightly as it had once held the poor birds in the big dead tree. He was still upside down as ever, standing on his head. But heads are not made to be stood upon. If you stand on your head for a very long time, a horrid thing happens. And this was where Mr. Twit got his biggest shock of all. With so much weight on it from above, his head began to get squashed into his body. Quite soon, it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight in the fatty folds of his flabby neck. I'm shrinking, burbled Mr. Twit. So am I, cried Mrs. Twit. Help me, save me, call a doctor, yelled Mr. Twit. I'm getting the dreaded shrinks. And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too. And this time it wasn't a fake, it was the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks began shrinking into their bodies, and their bodies began shrinking into their legs, and their legs began shrinking into their feet. And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw, on the floor of the living room, 2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in the world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit, and everyone, including Fred, shouted,